This is Black Money.
About economic liberation and freedom.
Critical conversations to invigorate our communities through Black-led CDFIs.
But most importantly, we want people to create wealth.
When we look at our communities, we still see a big disinvestment.
Going from resourceful to resourced.
CDFIs have that high touch. They understand their customers. They know how to reach out to those customers. They stay in touch with those customers.
We are trying to create job makers and not just job takers.
Yeah, I've even heard it said recently that great leaders don't lead from the top down, they lead from the bottom up because they're actually lifting everybody.
We have to do more than just being a regular lender.
Don't give me this story about if I teach you how to fish. Give me some money.
That's what it's about. Good morning, afternoon, depending on where you are coming from. I'm Justin Minott from the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs, and I am joined by the president and CEO of LiftFund, Laurie Vignaud. So good to have you here today.
I'm thrilled to be here, Justin. Thank you.
Oh, I'm excited. So now this is the last episode in the Women's History Month series. And if you've ever been to a fireworks show, Laurie, you know at the end of the fireworks show, there's this grand finale. They start shooting off all the spinners and the spouts. And I feel like that's what we're doing here today is this big grand finale with an incredible, impactful woman. And it's, enough of this history. It's her story today. So we're going to go into that. So Laurie, without further ado, they're not here to hear from me. Tell us about your journey and how you landed, all of the steps that landed you in this important work that you're doing with LiftFund.
I often reflect on that. And, it's hard to kind of put into words. This is where I landed, and it was the right doors at the right time with the right people who paved the way for me to learn the business, but more importantly, to land in a place where I think I could really make even more of a difference. So you may or may not know this, but I have over 40 years of banking experience. So I'm not necessarily a traditional banker, but my career started with a minority bank in New Orleans, Liberty Bank and Trust. Shout out to Alden McDonald, who gave me my first job in banking as a mortgage loan originator, which really was the catalyst for me, working with families and individuals purchasing their first home, seeing how challenging it was for them to acquire property, but more importantly, how it really took a village of resources in order to make that happen. And we really played a significant role in doing that. Then being recruited by a larger bank in New Orleans. By the way, I'm from New Orleans originally.
Love it. Shout out.
Yeah, and being able to expand on, not just loan originations for mortgages, but also building new single family homes in communities that were not seeing a real economic revitalization. And that took me across Louisiana. And then Hurricane Katrina happening and landing in Houston. And the bank had acquired another lending institution in Texas, which put us on the ground, but then being acquired by Capital One. And then my role expanded from just doing affordable housing, but also small business lending, small business technical assistance, asset building programs, looking at the entire community of resources that are needed to really have an impact on community development and revitalization. Had a stint with the city of Houston for a minute right after Hurricane Harvey, because, it's kind of interesting. That experience provided me the opportunity to learn how these federal dollars come in, provide resources for homeowners and those who are trying to rebuild their homes, and just how challenging that can be when you're trying to do it in an environment where there wasn't resources there before. The property values are not there to support the cost of having to revitalize, and how you blend resources to make it really applicable so that people can get back home. And then I had this wonderful opportunity. I met the chairman of Unity National Bank. And I have to admit, at the time, it was always my dream to be a president and CEO of a minority bank. Because I started off my career there, it's very easy to see the role that they play and just how important it is to have access to capital on so many levels. And so I did that for nearly 2 years. and decided that, hey, I really want to play a role in helping other investors create minority institutions. Because at the time, we saw Black banks slowly dwindling,
Hmm.
from 100 or so to 40 to 20 to teens. So I thought I would spend a little time doing that because it was just that important to me,
Yeah.
especially in neighborhoods that we see banks retrenching from, and we recognize and know that you need to have access to capital in order to create communities that's going to be vibrant and supportive. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a minority institution that's going to do that. And then lo and behold, minding my business, I had dinner with Janie Beretta, who started LiftFund over 30 years ago, headquartered in San Antonio, but she had branched off into 15 states. And she and I had this really amazing conversation about the work that I had been doing and how I can have an even greater impact working with the LiftFund team and being her successor as the new president and CEO. And I have to admit, it caught me in a way that I really didn't expect, but it felt so natural
Hmm.
because it created a way for me to be able to execute at a larger scale, but also a lot faster than it would have if I stayed in that lane. And I don't want to diminish the fact that that's still a very important role for many of us to play in
Right.
making sure that we're supporting minority banking institutions and that we're creating opportunities for more of them to be relevant in our community. But the role that a CDFI plays is just as important and critical. And so we're like the link to get people into the banking environment, because usually the customers that I'm touching may have a glitch and they're not quite ready to go to an institution that has tons of regulatory guidelines and boundaries. And so I like to say that I am that safety net, that safe space for you to get the attention, the support that you need, and the capital so that we can help you grow your business and make it sustainable. So long story to say, here I am. You know,
I love the story. I love the story. And all of our listeners, make sure you're hopping in the chat. Let us know who is here in the digital room. We love being here together. And you have, a living legend doing the work here. So make sure you're asking good questions in the chat. So, Laurie, one thing that stuck out in your story was you said it caught me. What about it caught you? Or what does that feel like for our listeners, across any industry when something just clicks and like, no, I need to be paying attention to this because not a lot of people are listening to that
Yeah.
guidance, right? So what did that feel like? What did that look like? What about it caught you?
It felt natural. I didn't feel like I was going to be butting heads. A lot of my career in my previous roles as a banking executive, you always feel like you're arguing the point for support in order to move the agenda. I always felt like I had to go in there with my tough skin so that I can continue to fight the fight, which is a very noble fight and someone has to do it. But in this environment, and I've actually shared this with Janie on multiple occasions, the people who I work with within this organization are just as mission driven and purpose driven as I am. And I remember my mom looking at me when I started talking about the position, and she said, "Oh my God, Laurie, you're beaming." There was a level of excitement that just kind of drew me there, and the opportunity is great, to do even more. And so, when I arrived in San Antonio, no family, no friends on the ground, unlike other cities that I've lived in. The one thing that was so rewarding and made me feel like I belong was the people. And just watching them work, watching the commitment, them embracing me as an outsider coming in to an institution that had one CEO from the very beginning.
Wow.
But it just felt so right. And so, I'm very mindful of how I feel about certain situations. I try not to make hasty decisions. I try to make sure that I have vetted all of my all of my resources, and that I've made a good decision. And often it's about how I feel about it. And I think all of us have been in situations where the energy just didn't feel right. I knew what I was walking into. I knew it was going to be difficult. That I knew that the job itself was going to be challenging, because we're in an environment where we really have to stay on our toes and stay committed
Yes.
to the mission. But the environment that I'm working in, with the people that I am working with, provide so much support, that it's just, I know I'm in the right place. They have
Yes.
made my transition here so amazingly easy. And I feel like I was able to hit the ground running and doing the work, as opposed to trying to convince a whole lot of people why the work is so important.
That's so good. I hope y'all are listening. This is good stuff. This is beautiful. So, talk about, for those who don't know, what the Lift Fund does. Give us kind of the scope of work and services for your incredible organization.
Thank you for that question, Justin. We are a micro lender. We focus on small business lending. We work with a lot of businesses that may just have an idea. We lend from $500 up to $5.5 million. We try to meet the business owner where they are and try to address the needs as best as we can, so that they can be successful at the end of the day. So a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, and then we get into situations where you have larger contractors, developers who need bridge loans and need operational money, and sometimes those are very difficult to get from a lending institution. So I provide that bridge so that they can build their capacity and they can build their reputation, so that they can go on and get the loan that they need. But right now we focus on small business lending. I'm very proud to say that over the 30 years, we have put over $1 billion in capital into the hands of nearly 30,000
You
small.
said $1 billion with a B.
$1 billion with a B.
We
And
like it with a B. That's nice.
yeah, and there's a return on that investment. For every dollar that we invest, we know there's a $14 return back into the economy. So we know that we are having a positive impact on the economic revitalization of our communities. And that's really, really important to take note of. But I'll also share that we spend a lot of time and effort on business support and providing coaching and mentoring, but also delivering a lot of business seminars and workshops, whether we're doing it individually or we're doing it, as a workshop with a group setting, or we're participating in cohorts. Even after our borrowers approach us for the loan, we continue to engage with them even after they've secured the loan. And I would probably say that our 96 to 97% repayment is attributed to the fact that we don't leave our businesses hanging. There is a relationship that's developed. And so we find that the model works really well for us. And so often I'm asked, well, that's very expensive, to have associates on the ground just doing technology training. But how do you do this work unless you're actually providing the support that the businesses need in order for them to move the needle? Many of them are really good at providing the service, but being a business owner takes a little more time and attention. And we want to be that safety net to help them meet whatever the gap is, or whatever the support that they need, so that we can make sure that they're going to be successful at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you're making investments way beyond the dollars, right? That have a massive dividend and a massive return. I want to hear, what is a story from your work that just reminds you of why you do what you're doing? On a hard day, or when you're thinking about all these things, which we're going to get into later, some of the headwinds that we're facing in this work. What is something, a story or an entrepreneur, a business that sticks out to you? You're like, oh yeah, this is why we're doing this.
You know what? I have many over the years. It's like when I happen to be home and I see someone who reminds me I helped them get their first home or their mortgage, and how challenging that was, but what an impact it had on their lives. Or I'll go to an event here, and although I may not have been involved with the transaction at the time, but they're sharing with me the story of why that loan that LiftFund provided, the impact it not only had on their business, but on their family.
Mm.
I mean, what we do is not just about, trying to create, this economic engine or this ecosystem, and that's really important. But it's the impact we're
Mm.
having on people's lives,
Yeah.
helping them build wealth, helping them create a sustainable platform that they can pass on generation to generation. If you have your business, 9 times out of 10, we're positioning you to own your home, which is also adding wealth. But the biggest takeaway for me is looking at the community. When you can have the rooftops and the small businesses, and then you have the lending institutions that are coming in, you are truly creating an environment where people can live and thrive and be safe and healthy. And Justin, we all know all of the implications and the trickle down effect that it has on people's lives long term when
Mm.
you're able to connect all of these dots. And so I just want to make sure that although I may not be doing affordable housing, I certainly know people who are doing it. We try to connect the dots. We try to create that synergy where we're all working in sync. I can't do it all by myself, but I didn't steal this quote, but it really does take a village to do the work that we do. And I'm always looking for partners that I can align with so that we can do even more across the footprint.
Yes, I love this language around ecosystem, and that's newer language for some folks, just really thinking about their environment, their city, their region as an ecosystem, this breathing, living thing that needs different elements. What are some of the things that you see as common denominators in thriving ecosystems? Like when people are doing this, the business owners, the community supported, there's resiliency, all of these things. What are some of those common things that you see?
It's access to capital.
Hmm.
I can't imagine how can you create a thriving economic environment if you don't have access.
Hmm.
And I've often said this in the past. You look at most communities that are disenfranchised and that are struggling, it's because there's no banks, there's no resources, there's no grocery stores, there's no services. And what drives that? The ability of someone who can get access to funds so that they can make the investment. And when it's there, the rest will follow.
Hmm.
I'm often in awe when you go into some new subdivisions and you see all of the resources. You got the grocery stores, you have the shopping, you have the schools, you have the churches, and you have the rooftops. It all comes together, but they're all interconnected. And the biggest link for me always comes down to where's the capital? And are we willing to make the investment? We're not going to see the return immediately, but there will be a positive return because once you can start it, it'll follow. The rest will follow. And so, yeah, that's my link, Justin.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's talk more deeply about CDFIs and the role of CDFIs in the ecosystem. It's a very unique, these mission-driven lenders, it's a very unique piece. Why are CDFIs so important, and what about that resonates for you?
Okay. Well, banks are highly regulated. Their safety and soundness, the federal guidelines often, unfortunately, places a lot of weight on them and what they can and cannot do. The role that I see the CDFI playing is the bridge between the customer not quite being bankable because of all of the regulations, and I can actually provide financing without being overly regulated as the banks. I don't want to spend a lot of time distinguishing between the for-profit and not-for-profit, but I am a not-for-profit CDFI. And so I'm not focused on profitability or, getting a return from my shareholders. I'm really focused on the impact that I can have on the small business owners that I'm trying to touch, and making sure people understand that it really, when you're investing in my organization as a nonprofit CDFI, your funds are truly going to support those small businesses and not just my bottom line. As long as I have a dollar at the end of the year that's positive, that is fine for me and my board members. But we do play a very unique role. I remember during the PPP program, and I'm sure many of those in the audience will remember that as well. I was the CEO of Unity National Bank and MDI. And we kept trying to emphasize to our congressional leaders why it was so important to make sure that we, MDIs and CDFIs, had access to those funds, because we were truly the ones touching the businesses that needed it the most. And so I'd like to think that together we play a significant role in helping businesses who are not quite ready to go to the larger institutions, or may not be borrowing at a level for the larger institutions. But we're that safety net. We're here to help lift you so that you can actually take advantage of whatever that lies ahead of you to grow your business. We're the bridge. We're the safe alternative for our businesses who are not quite bankable. I have aligned myself with many of my MDI members, in an effort for us to kind of leverage what we can both do. I don't want to take away from any businesses that are ready to go to them. I will help and support that. But any businesses that you think that you're not ready, or they're not ready to receive financing, send them over to me. And that way we can keep both connected, so that when they're ready to come back to the bank, they're in a position to do it, because the relationship is already there.
Right. Yeah, that's back to that ecosystem approach. I love that so much. So now talk about, you have seen 40 years in this space. Talk about what you've seen as some of the major transitions, and then bring this into the current landscape of what's in front of us, because I think you just have such a unique perspective on this.
Yeah, 40 years is a long time, huh?
It's beautiful.
When I first got into community banking, the challenge was explaining to everyone why it was so important to have gap financing. Affordability is not affordable for everyone. And in order for us to really support vibrant communities, there are some things that we cannot control, but there are others that we can. And so there was a time when the federal government and others saw the value of putting aside soft grants and funding so that we can fill the affordability gap, whether it was for buying a home, or having some of the municipalities provide us with grants so that we could buy down the interest rates on small business loans. There was a time when it felt like it was the cost of doing business if you were working for a larger institution, because they did it, but there were limitations on how much they would invest. Not that it took away from the work that they were trying to do, but we do recognize that as a profitable institution, you're looking at where you can make a profit, and not necessarily where you have to make an investment and not see the return as readily. But it was interesting, because around the time of the pandemic, and I hate using this as a benchmark, but the murder of George Floyd really put a spotlight on everything that we have been fighting for and talking about. And for a moment in time, I was really excited with the prospect that we were finally getting the attention that we needed on so many levels, whether it was business, housing, healthcare, education, you name it. The disparities were there. You could not hide from it. You could not pretend that it wasn't there. And you had many organizations that were leaning in to provide the support. And during my time at Unity, I'll be forever grateful for all of the institutions, the larger institutions that provided us capital, because as a minority bank, it's very hard to really serve as many customers as you want if you don't have the funding, the capital available for you to do it. And they provided that capital for Unity. And we were able to look at getting products and services and to be able to touch more businesses. But we're in an environment right now that's just really uncomfortable for me. And although, I'm sure many of my colleagues on this call will probably attest to it, I don't know what the heck's going on. We have not reached our benchmarks yet. We have not addressed the inequalities that has been in existence for so many years. Hundreds of years. It's not going to go away just because the pandemic is over and you feel like you've invested enough money in time that, everything is good, because it isn't. And, the businesses that I'm trying to serve is coming out of the pandemic, and they're struggling. for a number of reasons, whether or not they were able to hire back the people that they wanted. The cost of hiring right now is a lot greater than it was pre the pandemic. Providing services, having access to the capital when everybody is pulling back. And even for me as a nonprofit CDFI, a lot of my funders are now questioning, okay, how do I define how I provide resources? Because, all of a sudden it's not cool to allocate to a Black business, a brown business, a veteran, a woman. No longer should we give preferential treatment to anyone, even though we know the playing field is not balanced or fair. So
Mhm.
challenging time. And I think for all of us that I know that is part of the Alliance, this is a mission that we can all wrap our minds around and continue to fight for. But to see the full circle, it's like, oh my goodness, instead of going forward, we're really falling behind a little bit. And every day you read an article about another division that's closing, another DEI initiative that a state is shutting down, or, another decision is coming down that's going to be adverse to, the kind of work that we're doing. And, how do we redefine? And I hate to even say it that way. I don't want to redefine why I'm here.
Right.
I know why I'm here, and I know what we're doing and why it's so important. But why do I have to change the way I describe it just so you could feel better?
Right. To water it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense to me. So it is a very uncertain environment right now. What are you doing? Like, what are the proactive things if you were advising some other CDFIs who are navigating this space? How are you staying proactive and moving the needle despite headwinds, or adjusting your sails to
Yeah.
maybe make the wind go in your favor? How do we think about that?
I'm staying focused. My mission hasn't changed. My passion and purpose have not changed. I'm going to continue seeking out small businesses in communities that need it the most.
Mhm.
You can come to whatever conclusion you want to come to. But I'm really grateful for the funders who are supporting me, that they're just as passionate and wanting to do the same thing. And until you tell me otherwise, I'm just going to keep doing my job. I'm going to continue doing my work. And it is what it is. I'm not going to deter. I am going to be respectful and mindful, because at the end of the day, I need all my partners. And hopefully I will continue to garner support from those who are just as passionate about what we're trying to do. And there's still a great need. And, I don't know what else to say except that it is what it is, and this is what I'm going to do. So, period.
Not deterred. I love it so much. What is next for LiftFund? Where do you see this going? You're recently taking the reins with this beautiful legacy that's already come
Yeah.
before you. Where do you see the vision for the future?
There is definitely a future. I mean, as I stated earlier, the need is still great. That has not changed. I would love to take LiftFund beyond my 15 states to be completely national.
Yeah.
And if there's opportunities for me to work with other CDFIs and MDIs in making sure that we're leveraging and putting as much on the street as we can, I'm looking to do that as well. I have never taken the position ever in my career with whatever institution I was working with that I was the only one that can do this. It's
Right.
ludicrous, but when you can have organizations that are just as passionate, like mine, like Mission, who are trying to have an impact, then those are the type of partnerships that I'm looking for. We're talking about rural markets. We're looking at deserts, that don't have resources. How do we leverage in order for us to really have an impact in those communities who need it just as much as my inner city, I'm not going to step away from working in many of my communities. And if there's ways in which we could do this together, the need is always going to be there. We can't stop. We just can't
Yeah.
stop. We just have to figure out how to make it work.
Absolutely. So for our listeners, we do this on LinkedIn to expand the reach of this conversation and make sure it's touching as many people as we can. Who is a great fit as a business owner? If there are listeners here who can share this interview out with their network, who's a great fit for your organization as a business owner in your community?
Good fit for me. Gosh, I focus on small business. I would love to partner with someone who's looking at affordable housing. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to partner with someone who's looking at asset building programs or community development programs. How do we leverage what we're doing in order to have an impact on a community that's robust and sustainable? So how do we take the best of what we do and leverage it with another? That's what I'm looking for. I think those make the best partners. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we can actually show that we can have an even greater impact. I'm constantly looking and learning. We're about to undergo our strategic action planning session to kind of look at, what are the themes out there? Where are the challenges? Where should we be focusing a little more time, energy, and resources? I'm headquartered in San Antonio, but I'm in every major city in Texas. I'm in New Orleans. I'm in Atlanta. We're soon going into Miami. Although I don't have people on the ground in every one of the states in which I'm working in, I would love to be able to say, we're in your neighborhood, we're in your community, let's work together. And so that's kind of what's on my future horizon. And I'm looking for partners in order for us to do this effectively.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I love that. And how about the entrepreneurs? Which entrepreneurs should we be sending your way as far as these small business owners?
I'm going to say this as a joke, but any legal business I can help.
Hey, I like it.
As long as it's legal, I am able to help them. As I said before, we work with individuals who have a hobby that they're thinking about putting into a business model, and we can help them do that and provide some resources to
Mm-hmm.
help them do that. We do SBA lending. We're the number one SBA community advantage lender in our region. We're one of I think we're like number 2 when it comes to SBA 504 lending. We try to utilize whatever resources out there that's going to be best for our customers. And although, because I'm a CDFI and because I do risk-based lending, I'm constantly trying to figure out ways in which I can get low-cost money. Often I have to borrow, and the banks are not giving me all the best rates because their rates are higher, and you have to pass it on. So I'm looking for opportunities in which I can buy down interest rates or be able to secure funding through sources that will not be as expensive. And so
Right.
we're having conversations with many different federal agencies to help look at small business lenders like the CDFIs and to help us. I'm not a bank. I don't have deposits. I can't just go to the Federal Reserve, or Treasury and say, hey, I want to get a few $1,000,000 at a very, very low rate that's afforded for them. So for me, in order to stay competitive, but to also not create an impediment for my businesses because my cost is so high, I'm constantly looking at how can we leverage this and how can we make it more affordable so that my businesses can access the full amount that they need and not a partial amount. So it's a challenge, but one that I think that together we can certainly make some inroads. I mean, you have people who are paying attention. I'm not the only one that's been talking about this, but I do know that collectively we can have a bigger impact than if we're having it one-offs.
Yes.
So that's part of my mission to do more collaborations, to have more think tanks for us to, come together when it comes to special issues that impact us all, so that we can have a collective voice and we have data. I know for us, they have 30 years of data to support why we do what we do and what works and what doesn't work and where we can make improvements. I'm sure everyone on this call certainly can leverage the data and their experience as well. So we just have to get in front of the right congressional members, the right representatives, because all of them can play a significant role in helping us do this work.
Right. It does take everybody. And I mean, this is why our conference this year is literally called The Power of Us, because it's about the collective and moving this together. And if you're listening right now and you're not a member of the Alliance, sorry, you can't come. Well, I guess you could be a sponsor. Reach out to Eleanor if you want to sponsor. That's really your only way to get there. But we have a good time collaborating, and we take the work very seriously and make sure that we're coming together in ways that are rejuvenating for our people. So excited to have everybody there for this conference as well. Laurie, you have been wonderful. Thank you for hopping on as our newest Alliance member. Welcome to the family. So excited to have you here. And actually, we'll end with this. Why join the Alliance? Why did you do it?
Because you're my peers, you're my leaders, you're the people that I have so much love and respect for. I am just so excited to be in the company of the Allegiance. I've heard so many things about you guys over the years. And so as soon as I became the CEO of a CDFI, you were one of the first agencies that I sought after. And I have to give a shout out to my girl, Gina Nesbitt, because Gina definitely made it a point to make sure that I connected with the right folks at the Alliance. And I'm forever grateful. And I'm looking forward to just learning and collaborating and just enjoying the knowledge of sharing experiences and best practices. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this amazing group. And I'm just looking forward to meeting everybody.
I love it. And big shout out to Gina. So much love to Gina, doing brilliant work out here. Make sure everybody connects with her too, Gina Nesbitt. Laurie, thank you. Thanks for your heart. Thanks for your wisdom and for sharing this time with us. And to everybody who hopped on LinkedIn Live, you could have been anywhere else, but you chose to spend this time with us. So we're so grateful. Laurie, keep changing the world. And I look forward to continuing to support you at the Alliance and continuing to see you thrive and elevate all the important things you're doing.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Hope you have a great week.
Yeah, you too. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
This is Black Money.
About economic liberation and freedom.
Critical conversations to invigorate our communities through Black-led CDFIs.
But most importantly, we want people to create wealth.
When we look at our communities, we still see a big disinvestment.
Going from resourceful to resourced.
CDFIs have that high touch. They understand their customers. They know how to reach out to those customers. They stay in touch with those customers.
We are trying to create job makers and not just job takers.
Yeah, I've even heard it said recently that great leaders don't lead from the top down, they lead from the bottom up, because they're actually lifting everybody.
We have to do more than just being a regular lender.
Don't give me this story about if I teach you how to fish. Give me some money.